That dog was ready to die before he let me take one more step inside that cave. I remember the exact way he stared at me, too. Not with anger, not with fear. Just resolve. He wasn't backing down, even though he was half-starved and his paws were bleeding raw. I hadn't come looking for him. I was just out hiking through the woods near Pine Ridge, doing what I always do on weekends, trying to get away from people and noise. I'd parked off a dirt road about an hour outside town and followed the sound of running water, hoping to find a good fishing spot. Instead, I found him. The cave mouth wasn't even visible at first, hidden behind a curtain of moss and vines. But the barking, ragged and desperate, caught my ear. It was a warning, not a greeting. I ducked through the brush and stepped into a shadowed opening barely taller than my shoulders. That's when I saw him. A huge, shaggy German Shepherd mix, ribs poking through his coat, tail low, hackles up, and a thick, rusted chain fastened to an old steel stake hammered into the cave wall. I froze. One wrong move, and I knew I'd get torn up, but something about him, the way he stood there, tense but not aggressive, made me pause. "Hey, buddy," I said softly. "Easy now. I'm not here to hurt you." He growled low in his throat, but didn't lunge. Didn't bark again either, just watched me, like he was daring me to come any closer. There was a cooler breeze coming from deeper in the cave, and I realized there was more to it than just this narrow entrance. The dog took one step sideways, still blocking the path inward, still chained. He was guarding something. I backed out slowly, heart pounding, and called animal control from my truck. I figured they'd know what to do. But when they showed up, they couldn't coax him out either. No tags, no collar, just that chain and that stare. And not once did he whimper or whine. The officer, a younger guy named Pete, turned to me. "He's guarding something. Could be pups. Could be, well, something worse. We need to find out." They sent for backup, and a vet tranquilized him gently. I hated seeing him go down like that, legs folding under him, slow and unwilling. He fought it too, right up to the last blink. Pete and I followed the vet inside. What we found broke something in me. The cave went back farther than we thought, opening into a rounded chamber about 20 feet across. It was dry, scattered with old blankets, and what looked like an old sleeping bag. And there, nestled in the far corner beneath a small beam of light coming from a crack in the rock above, was a child. A boy. No older than 6. Curled up, fast asleep, clutching that dog's ragged tail like it was a lifeline. Pete gasped. The vet went straight to her knees and checked his breathing. "He's alive," she whispered. "Dehydrated. Thin, but alive." The dog, later named Samson, had been guarding that child like a knight. For how long, no one knew. The boy wasn't talking, not at first. I stuck around as the days unfolded, mostly because I couldn't stay away. Something about that dog had grabbed hold of me. He ended up at Pine Ridge Animal Hospital under the care of a gentle old vet named Dr. Langley. I visited every day. Samson didn't trust me at first. He didn't trust anyone, but he tolerated me. Sat up when I entered the room, watched every move I made. I started bringing him scraps from the diner, and eventually he let me scratch behind his ears. That's when I saw the scar around his neck, where the chain had bitten into his skin. Old, deep, healed over. He'd been chained long before I found him. Meanwhile, the boy was placed with child services. They gave him a name, Tyler, since he wouldn't give them one himself. The news ran the story non-stop. Mysterious dog saves lost boy. People sent in donations. Some offered to adopt them both. but neither Samson nor Tyler seemed to respond to anyone, except each other. The moment Tyler was brought to visit Samson, his whole face lit up. He didn't speak, but he ran to him and buried his face in Samson's fur. The dog whined low and licked his ear. That's when Dr. Langley said what we were all thinking. They belong together. I couldn't argue with that, but with no ID, no family coming forward, and a dog with an unknown past, the system was moving slow. Too slow. So I made a decision. I applied to foster both of them. I had the space. I lived alone in a small farmhouse on the edge of town, with a fenced yard and more quiet than most kids could stand. But Tyler didn't seem to mind the quiet. Neither did Samson. It took a few weeks and a mountain of paperwork, but they finally let me take them home. I'll never forget the drive back. Tyler sat in the back with Samson's head in his lap, stroking his ears like it was the only thing anchoring him to earth. At home, Samson refused to sleep unless he could see Tyler. He slept on the floor beside his bed, rising only to eat or follow him around the house. Tyler still didn't talk, but he started drawing. Little scribbled pictures. Always the same two figures. A boy and a dog, sometimes in a forest, sometimes near a fire. Once, inside a cave. I pinned them to the fridge, and every day there'd be a new one. The sheriff came by after about a month just to check on things. He looked around, talked with Tyler's caseworker, and asked me how it was going. He still hasn't said anything? I shook my head. Not yet. But he's here. He's safe. That's something. He nodded slowly. Well, if anyone can reach him, it's that dog. One night, about 2 months in, I heard something from Tyler's room. A soft noise, like whispering. I cracked the door open and saw him sitting up in bed, talking low into Samson's fur. I didn't interrupt, just stood there, heart pounding, watching the first real moment of peace that boy had shown since we found him. The next morning, he looked me in the eye and said, "Can Samson stay forever?" That's when I knew. No matter what paperwork had to be filed, or what rules had to be bent, I wasn't letting either of them go. And that was only the beginning. The thing about kids like Tyler is, they don't come with a manual. No one tells you how to help a 6-year-old who won't talk, won't make eye contact, and jumps every time a door closes too hard. But I wasn't flying totally blind. I had Samson. He was my compass in all of it. That dog watched Tyler like he was the moon and stars, slept beside him, followed him around the house, and barked at the window if anyone unfamiliar came to the door. He'd station himself under the kitchen table during meal times, one paw always resting against Tyler's socked foot, like he needed constant reassurance the boy was still there. We started forming routines. Breakfast at 7:30, walks in the yard, drawing time at the kitchen table. Tyler wouldn't talk much, not to me anyway, but he started humming little tunes while coloring. Simple ones, soft and repetitive. Samson would rest his big head on the table and listen like it was the finest music he'd ever heard. I showed Tyler how to feed Samson. At first, I had to place the scoop of kibble in his hand, guide it toward the metal bowl. But after a week or so, he started doing it all by himself. Measured, careful scoops, eyes focused, jaw set. And every time he did, Samson would give him this slow, gentle wag of the tail. Like the world made a little more sense when that bowl hit the floor. One rainy Saturday, Tyler wandered into the living room where I was reading and sat down on the rug. He didn't say anything, just stared out the window while Samson curled up beside him. I kept quiet, just turned the page, and let the silence settle. After a while, Tyler spoke without looking at me. He waited. I lowered my book. "Who did?" Samson. I nodded. Yeah, he waited for you. You were very important to him. Still are. Tyler scratched behind Samson's ear. He was cold, but he stayed. My throat tightened. I didn't push. I just sat there, holding my breath while the rain tapped the windows. He didn't say anything else that day, but something shifted. The next week, Tyler asked if we could build Samson a new doghouse. I hadn't expected that. He brought me a crumpled paper drawing, his usual stick figure style, but this time with a big rectangular house, a food bowl labeled with a messy S, and little stars drawn above it. He deserves stars, Tyler said, like the cave, but nicer. We spent the weekend building it. I had leftover wood from an old shed project, and Tyler helped sand the edges, paint the panels. He insisted on nailing a small wind chime to the inside roof. Said it would sing Samson to sleep. When we finished, he climbed inside and lay down next to the dog, both of them just staring up at the slanted ceiling like it was their own private planet. I started taking notes about the little breakthroughs, what time he spoke, what triggered it, what calmed him. The caseworker appreciated that, said it would help with the eventual transition. That word, transition, sat heavy with me, because I already knew. I didn't want there to be a transition. I wanted this to be permanent. The paperwork was crawling forward. Child Services had managed to get a name from him after one of his drawings showed a house with numbers on the door. They traced it, found a burnt-down trailer on the outskirts of Clay County. No bodies were recovered from the fire, and there wasn't much left to investigate. The working theory was neglect, maybe even abandonment. But it didn't matter what they called it. The boy had survived in the woods, alone, with Samson. That kind of loyalty didn't happen by accident. One day, I was out back clearing a patch of weeds near the fence when I heard a scream. I dropped the rake and ran to the house, heart slamming against my ribs. Inside, I found Tyler in the hallway, shaking, face pale. Samson stood between him and the front door, barking fiercely. I followed his gaze and saw what had caused it. A stranger stood just outside the screen door, hands raised, eyes wide. "Sorry," the man said quickly. "Didn't mean to scare anybody. I was just looking for a dog, one that went missing a while back. Saw the news piece a few weeks ago. Thought maybe..." He trailed off, glancing toward Samson. The dog hadn't stopped barking. "His name's Samson now," I said carefully. "He belongs to us." The man stepped back. "Right. Of course, just thought I'd check. He used to belong to my cousin, before he disappeared." "Your cousin?" He scratched his head. "Lived out near Clay County. Not the best guy, honestly. Didn't treat the animals too great. I always told him he didn't deserve that dog. When I saw the footage, I recognized him. Just wanted to be sure he was okay." I studied him. His clothes were clean, but his boots were muddy, and his truck, parked crooked on the shoulder, had a busted taillight. "I appreciate your concern," I said, my voice steady. "But he's not up for grabs." The man nodded, eyes flicking to Tyler. "Didn't mean no harm. Take care of him." I didn't move until he was in his truck and pulling away. Even then, I stayed alert, noting the plate number. That night, I called the sheriff, gave him the description, told him what the guy said. The sheriff promised to look into it, but I could tell he wasn't too worried. Probably just a drifter trying to stir things up. Still, I double-checked all the locks that night. Tyler didn't sleep much. Neither did I. But Samson stayed by the door until morning. A few days later, the school counselor came by to talk about enrolling Tyler in first grade. It was late in the year, but she thought part-time attendance could help him transition. I wasn't sure how he'd handle it, but Tyler surprised me. "I want to learn," he said. It was the first complete sentence he'd said to another adult besides me. The counselor beamed. I took him shopping for school supplies the next day. He picked a backpack with dogs on it and asked if Samson could walk him to the bus stop. I promised he could. That first morning, Tyler stood at the end of the driveway, backpack on, lunchbox clutched tight, while Samson sat beside him like a furry guardian. When the bus pulled up, I watched him hesitate. Then he turned to Samson, touched his head, and whispered something. I couldn't hear it, but the dog gave one short, low bark. Tyler climbed aboard. And just like that, the world got a little bigger for both of them. School wasn't easy. Tyler didn't talk much, and the other kids didn't always know how to handle that. But he listened. He followed directions. And every afternoon when he stepped off that bus, Samson was there to greet him with a wagging tail and excited bark. They started sleeping better, eating more. Tyler began using full sentences, asking questions, even laughing sometimes. It was quiet laughter, almost like he was surprised it could come out of him. I took them hiking again, back near Pine Ridge. Not to the same spot, but close. Tyler held Samson's leash while I carried the backpack. When we reached a clearing, he dropped to his knees and ran his hands through the grass. "This feels better than the cave," he said. "Why's that?" "It's warmer, and you're here too." That hit me right in the chest. We ate sandwiches on a flat rock while Samson sniffed around, ears twitching. Tyler showed me a drawing he'd done at school. 3 stick figures this time. Him, me, and Samson. We were standing in front of a house with smoke curling from the chimney. Above it, a sun with a happy face. I hung that one above the mantel. As the weeks passed, we settled deeper into routine. I taught Tyler how to plant vegetables. He taught Samson how to high-five. We went to the farmer's market on Saturdays and stopped by the diner afterward, where Miss Annie always gave Samson a piece of sausage wrapped in a napkin. One afternoon, while fixing the mailbox, Tyler came up and sat beside me. He was quiet a moment, then said, "Were you scared when you saw Samson in the cave?" "Yeah," I admitted. "A little. He looked like he was ready to take my arm off." Tyler nodded thoughtfully. He was scared too, but he stayed. Because I was there. I looked at him. I think he would have stayed forever. Tyler's eyes were calm. Me too. I didn't say anything else, just handed him a screwdriver and let him help finish the job. We stood back together and admired our handiwork, slightly crooked but solid. Later that night, as we sat on the porch watching fireflies blink to life, Tyler leaned his head against my arm. "I used to wish for someone to find us," he said. "Me and Samson. We waited a long time." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I'm glad I did." "Me too," he whispered. Samson stretched out on the porch between us, tail thumping lazily. The air was soft, the stars just starting to show. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like something good was growing here. Not just healing. Home. We were about 3 months into our new life together when things started shifting again, not in a bad way, but in the kind of way that reminds you life doesn't stay still for long. Tyler had adjusted to school surprisingly well. He wasn't the chattiest kid in the room, and he still had some nervous habits, flinching at sudden loud noises or holding his breath when adults raised their voices. But he was learning. He was growing. And every day he came home, he'd tell me one new thing he'd seen or learned, like a reporter filing daily dispatches from the front lines of childhood. And Samson, well, he'd found his rhythm too. He'd taken to sleeping at the foot of my bed now instead of Tyler's, which was something I didn't think the boy would be okay with. But he surprised me again. One night, he just came into the living room where I was watching an old Western and said, "Samson doesn't have to guard me all night anymore. He can rest." I muted the TV and looked at him carefully. "You sure about that?" He nodded. "I don't wake up scared so much now. He knows I'm okay." So that night, when Samson wandered into my room and plopped down with a groan and a sigh at the foot of my bed, it felt like some kind of quiet milestone. Like he, too, had finally let out a breath he'd been holding since the cave. The next week, Tyler came home with a permission slip. Field trip to the Pine Ridge Nature Center. His class was going to learn about native plants and animals, go on a small hike with a park ranger, eat lunch by the lake. I watched him slide the paper across the table to me like he was presenting a royal decree. "You have to sign it," he said, "but only if you think it's okay." I smiled. "I think it's more than okay." He grinned, then quickly tried to hide it like smiling too big might break something. But I saw it. And I signed the slip. That Friday, I packed his lunch extra carefully. 2 PB&J sandwiches, no crust, apple slices, carrot sticks, and a juice box with the cartoon shark he liked. When the bus pulled up, I walked him out with Samson on a leash, both of us watching as he climbed aboard and waved through the window. Samson whined once when the bus disappeared down the road. I patted his head. "He'll be back." We both stood there a while longer, just staring at the empty road. Then I took him inside and tried to focus on chores. Vacuuming. Laundry. I even cleaned out the gutters. But something was gnawing at the edge of me. A kind of restlessness I hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe it was just the silence. Maybe it was something else. So I leashed Samson up again, and we got in the truck. I drove out toward the spot near the cave. Not to the exact place, we'd agreed with the sheriff to keep people away from it, but close enough that I could hike a familiar trail and think. We walked for a couple of miles, Samson sniffing around like he owned the forest. At one point he stopped dead, ears perked. I tensed too, my eyes scanning the brush, but it was just a squirrel darting through the leaves. Still, it made me remember that not everything in those woods had been peaceful. We still didn't know the full story of how Tyler ended up out there. And that man who came by the house weeks ago, he never showed up again. But something about him stuck in my mind. The way he'd looked at Samson. The way Tyler had frozen when he saw him. I made a mental note to talk to the sheriff again. That afternoon, the bus dropped Tyler off right on time. He came running down the driveway, flushed and dusty, his backpack bouncing against his back. "It was amazing," he shouted. "We saw deer prints and a bald eagle and a beaver dam and—" Samson bounded up to meet him, tail wagging furiously. Tyler threw his arms around his neck and kept talking a mile a minute. I couldn't keep up with half of it, but I didn't care. It was the most excited I'd ever seen him. He had a name tag sticker on his shirt with Tyler in block letters. He peeled it off and stuck it on Samson's head. Now he's official too. That night at dinner, he asked me something I didn't expect. "Can I make a scrapbook?" "A scrapbook?" "Yeah, of me and Samson. Like a memory book." I smiled. "Sure, buddy. That's a great idea." So we went to the craft store the next day, and he picked out a big spiral-bound album, some markers, stickers, glue sticks. He started with a drawing of the cave. Then a photo I'd taken of him and Samson in front of the doghouse. Then the field trip sticker, and a caption he wrote underneath that said, "I went on a trip and came home. Samson was waiting." Every day after school, he added something new. A leaf he'd found, a drawing of the lake, even a napkin from the diner with a doodle of a dog. The book started filling up fast. One night, after he'd gone to bed, I flipped through it while Samson lay at my feet. There was something sacred in the way he'd arranged things. No sense of order, but every page felt like a monument to a moment that mattered. Page after page, the story of their bond unfolded in glue and ink. Then, near the middle of the book, I found a photo I hadn't seen before. It was a Polaroid. Blurry, slightly off-center, but unmistakable. Tyler, a little younger, standing next to an older man in a leather jacket. A heavy-set guy with sunken eyes and an unshaven face, one hand on Tyler's shoulder, gripping it a little too tightly. Tyler's smile didn't reach his eyes. I stared at the photo for a long time. Where had he gotten it? Why had he kept it? And why did he glue it into a scrapbook full of memories he wanted to cherish? The next morning, I asked him about it. I kept my voice light, casual. "Hey, bud, that photo of you and that man, where'd it come from?" He didn't answer right away, just kept eating his cereal. "Was he someone you used to know?" Finally, Tyler nodded. "He's the one who left us." "Left you?" "He chained Samson, said he wasn't allowed to come with us, but I ran back. I stayed with Samson. Then he left. He didn't come back." I set down my coffee. "And the cave?" Tyler's eyes were far away. "We hid there. It was quiet. Nobody found us. Samson kept us warm." Us. I caught the word. "Tyler," I said gently, "who else was with you?" He looked up at me. "My brother." My breath caught. "You have a brother?" He nodded. "He was little, but he got sick. He didn't wake up." Silence stretched between us like a dropped rope. I didn't press further, didn't ask when or how. I just reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Samson came and laid his head on Tyler's knee. We didn't say anything else for the rest of breakfast. Later that day, I called the sheriff, told him what Tyler had said. He was quiet for a long time. "We'll send someone back out there," he said. "See if there's anything we missed. We'll do it careful, respectful." I thanked him, hung up, and sat on the porch with Samson until the stars came out. The next week passed in a haze. Tyler was quieter again, retreating into his drawings. But now, the drawings changed. He started drawing 2 boys instead of 1. One always smaller, sometimes holding Samson's paw, sometimes just a shadow beside the larger figure. He never named him. But I knew. I let him process it his way. I didn't try to fix it. I just kept showing up, kept making sandwiches, kept feeding Samson, kept leaving the porch light on. One evening, as we were all sitting in the yard, Tyler turned to me and asked, "If I had a real name, what do you think it was?" I blinked. "Tyler is your real name." He looked down. "But before the cave, I don't think it was Tyler." "Maybe not," I said slowly. "But it's yours now. You get to keep it or change it. Either way, it's yours." He seemed to think about that, then nodded. "Okay." We sat there in silence until the first firefly blinked to life. And Samson, always the sentinel, stood watch. That night, I went into my office and pulled out a folder I'd been keeping. It had all the adoption paperwork, the court documents, the contact logs with the caseworker. I still didn't know if we'd hit any snags, especially now, with the possibility of a birth family out there somewhere. But I'd made up my mind a long time ago. Tyler and Samson weren't going anywhere. They were already home. The sheriff called me just after lunch, voice low and careful like he was walking across thin ice. Said his guys had gone back to the cave, brought a forensics team this time, and found something small buried near the back wall. A toy car. One of those little metal ones with chipped paint and rusted wheels. Nearby, a tattered baby blanket. They hadn't unearthed anything more, at least not yet, but it painted a picture they were trying real hard not to say out loud. I thanked him. Didn't ask for details. Didn't need them. Tyler's drawings had already filled in the blanks. That night, after dinner, Tyler and I were sitting on the porch again, watching Samson roll in the grass like he was half puppy. Tyler had his knees pulled up to his chest, arms wrapped around them. He was quiet, more than usual, his eyes stuck on something invisible in the horizon. I thought maybe it was time. "You told me about your brother," I said gently. "I just want you to know. I believe you." He didn't look at me. "They won't find him." "Maybe not, but that doesn't mean he didn't matter. He was little, he cried a lot, but Samson never left him alone." My throat burned. "You didn't leave him either." He finally looked at me. It wasn't enough. I reached out and placed my hand over his. "You were just a kid. You stayed. You protected him as best you could. That's more than most adults would have done." He didn't say anything else, just leaned his head against my arm. I stayed that way with him until the mosquitoes started to bite, and the porch light flicked on automatically. Over the next few weeks, things picked up speed. The sheriff's department wrapped their investigation quietly. No formal charges, no big public announcements, just an official statement confirming Tyler had been in the woods alone, and that certain items suggested a second child may have once been with him. But without a body, there wasn't much more they could say. Tyler didn't ask about it, didn't ask about the man who'd left him, or whether anyone would come looking. I think he knew the answer. Instead, he focused on building his scrapbook. He added a page with a picture of the toy car the sheriff had shown us. Drew it sitting on a patch of moss under a tree. No people, just the car and the tree, and the word "safe" written in the corner in big block letters. He never explained it. I didn't ask him to. That same week, something unexpected happened. The school counselor called me one afternoon, said Tyler had made a friend. "A real friend," she said, excited. "Not just a buddy to sit next to. They play together at recess, talk at lunch, even asked to be in the same group for reading circle." I almost didn't know what to say. "That's great. What's his name?" "Colin. Sweet kid. Bit of a chatterbox. I think Tyler likes that." That evening, Tyler came home smiling. Not just a little grin, either, but a full-face, tooth-showing smile. "Colin says I can come over sometime," he said. "He has a trampoline." I chuckled. "You ever been on a trampoline before?" He shook his head. "Not yet." We arranged the playdate for Saturday. I talked to Colin's parents, nice folks who lived on the other side of town, and they were happy to have Tyler over. I asked if it was okay for Samson to come too. The mom paused for a second, then said, "Sure, why not?" So Saturday morning, we loaded up in the truck, Tyler in the back seat with Samson pressed against him, both looking out the window like they were heading off on some grand adventure. The visit went smoothly. Colin's mom sent me a photo of the boys jumping on the trampoline, while Samson sat guard by the edge, barking every time they got too high. Tyler came home flushed and breathless, cheeks red from laughing. "He says I can come back next week," he said, "and he's going to show me how to play Minecraft." I had no idea what Minecraft was, but I nodded. "Sounds like a good plan." Things kept getting better. Not perfect. Some nights Tyler still had trouble sleeping, and once in a while he'd wake up calling out for Samson in a panic. But better. More stable. He started telling jokes, terrible ones he learned from Colin, and I laughed every time, even when I didn't get the punchline. Then came the court date. The caseworker showed up at the house with a stack of forms and a hopeful smile. We're recommending full guardianship. We think it's time. I felt like I'd been holding my breath for months. Finally, I let it out. Let's do it. We went through the paperwork. Tyler's school records, his medical files, a dozen different forms about my background, the house, Samson. It felt like a mountain of red tape, but I didn't care. Every signature brought us one step closer. On the day of the hearing, Tyler dressed in his best shirt, blue with little white checks, and combed his hair until it lay flat. "Do I have to say anything?" he asked. "Only if you want to," I said. He nodded slowly. "Okay. I think I want to." We sat in the courtroom, quiet and clean and humming with low conversation. Tyler held Samson's leash in his lap, fingers curling around the fabric like it was an anchor. The judge was kind, gray-haired, with smile lines around his eyes. He asked a few questions, mostly procedural stuff. Then he looked at Tyler. "Son, is there anything you want to say today?" Tyler stood up. His voice was quiet, but clear. "I was lost," he said, "and Samson stayed, and then we got found. And now we're home. That's all." The judge looked at me. "Well, I think that says it all." And just like that, the gavel came down. Afterward, we stopped by the diner. Miss Annie gave us all free pie and slipped Samson a full slice of bacon. Tyler gave her one of his drawings, a cartoon version of her holding a tray of pies surrounded by sparkles. She taped it up behind the counter. That night, I tucked him in and sat beside his bed for a while. He looked up at me. "I think my brother's in the stars now." I brushed his hair back gently. "I think you're right." He blinked slowly. "Do you think he can see us?" "Yeah," I whispered. "And I think he's real proud of you." Tyler closed his eyes, and Samson curled up on the floor, tail thumping once before going still. Outside, the wind picked up. The trees rustled like whispers. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to keep watch. Someone else already had that job, and he never left his post. Spring arrived late that year, tiptoeing in behind weeks of rain and gray skies. When it finally showed up, it exploded like someone had flipped a switch. The trees budded overnight. Dandelions popped up across the lawn like gold coins scattered by a forgetful leprechaun. Tyler loved it. Every morning before school, he'd rush out to count how many more had appeared. And Samson, like always, was never more than a few feet behind. By now, we'd all fallen into a rhythm. Tyler was thriving in school. His teacher emailed me regularly to say how much his reading had improved. He and Colin were practically inseparable. Weekends were filled with hikes, cookouts, library trips, and the occasional movie night, complete with popcorn and Samson stretched out across both our feet, like a living, breathing rug. But that spring also brought something else: curiosity. Tyler had begun to ask more questions. Not just about the world. He'd already filled up a whole notebook with questions like, why do bees make hexagons? And do stars ever run out of twinkle? But about himself, about where he came from. "Do you think I used to have a birthday?" he asked one night while helping me wash dishes. "Of course you did," I said. "Everyone has a birthday." "But I don't know mine." I dried my hands and crouched down to his level. "You know, we can pick one if you want, a day to celebrate you." He considered it. "What about the day you found us?" "That could work." "But it was cold that day," he said, wrinkling his nose. "I think it should be in spring, when everything starts over." That settled it. We marked the calendar for April 17th, and declared it Tyler Day. I baked a cake, badly, if I'm being honest, and we invited Colin's family and Miss Annie from the diner. Even the sheriff stopped by with a little box wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a compass, old but shiny, the kind you clip to a belt loop. "Thought you could use this," he told Tyler. "For adventures, just in case you ever get turned around again." Tyler's eyes lit up. "I won't," he said, gripping the compass. "Not with Samson." That night, after everyone left, and the house was quiet again, Tyler looked up at me from the couch where he sat with cake crumbs on his chin. This was the best birthday I never had. Things felt good. Real good. Maybe even too good. Because life has a way of testing you right when you start to breathe easy again. It started with the letter. A plain envelope, no return address, just our mailbox number scribbled in pen. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed. No signature. "I know who the boy is. I know who you are. Don't get too comfortable." I read it 3 times before setting it down. My stomach turned over slowly, like wet cement. I didn't tell Tyler. I didn't want to spook him, but I called the sheriff and handed the letter over. He frowned, read it twice, and sighed. "Could be nothing," he said. "Could be someone poking around where they shouldn't. I'll have the station keep an eye out." Still, I changed the locks the next day. Tyler noticed the new deadbolt. "Are we hiding?" he asked. "No," I said. "We're just being careful, grown-up stuff." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't buy it completely. A few days later, someone started calling the house and hanging up. No voice. Just silence. Sometimes breathing. Sometimes not even that. I told the sheriff. He had the phone company trace the number, but it was a burner, dead end. I added a camera above the porch. Life went on, but the edges felt different now, like a picture that's been slightly tilted in the frame. Tyler picked up on it. Kids always do. He started checking the doors himself before bed, stopped leaving the windows cracked like he used to. Even Samson seemed more alert, sleeping in the hallway again, ears twitching at the smallest creak. One evening, as I came back from taking the trash out, I spotted a car at the edge of the property, parked behind the tree line. Engine off. I could just make out the shape of a man inside. When I approached, the engine roared and the car peeled away. I didn't get the plate. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I sat Tyler down. "There's something you should know," I said. "Someone might be trying to figure out who you are. But it doesn't mean they'll find anything. And it doesn't mean you're not safe." He was quiet for a while. Then he looked up at me. "Are they bad?" "I don't know. Maybe. But it's my job to protect you. Mine and Samson's." Tyler nodded. Then he walked over and hugged Samson, burying his face in the dog's neck. Samson gave a low huff and licked his cheek. A few days later, Tyler came home with a school project. Family tree. I froze when he showed me the assignment sheet. He didn't have names, no birthdays, no old stories passed down at the dinner table. "I can just draw me and Samson," he said. "That's family, right?" I smiled. "More than enough." He added me, too. Drew a tree with big, thick branches and 3 stick figures sitting in the leaves, labeled each one. Me, Samson, and you. He taped it to the fridge when it was done. But the letter still gnawed at me. I started doing some digging of my own, went back through old newspaper archives, police reports from Clay County. I was looking for a name, a face, anything to connect Tyler's past to the man who left him. One article stood out. A small piece buried in the back of an old paper from almost 2 years ago. Headline: Rural Trailer Fire Claims 2 Presumed Missing. The man in the photo was the same one from Tyler's scrapbook, the cousin who'd come to our door. Only he wasn't a cousin. He was Tyler's father. Name: Darren Boyd. Criminal record longer than my arm. Assault, petty theft, drug charges. The fire was ruled accidental. Darren had vanished before anyone could question him. The kids listed as presumed missing were Tyler and a younger boy named Jacob. So now I had a name, and I had a bad feeling. I took the info to the sheriff. He listened, then promised to send it up the chain. They reopened the case. That weekend, I took Tyler and Samson out of town. Just for a night. Cabin rental 2 counties over. No cell reception, just trees and quiet. I didn't tell him why. Just said we needed a little adventure. We built a fire, roasted marshmallows, told stories. Tyler made one up about a knight and his loyal beast who protected a castle in the sky. Said the beast could smell lies and breathe ice when danger was near. Samson, naturally, was the beast. I asked him what the knight's name was. He looked at me and said, "I think it's just Tyler." That night, while he slept curled up next to Samson on the cabin cot, I stood by the window and watched the woods. Nothing moved. No cars. No men hiding in the dark. Still, I didn't blink until morning. Back home, things seemed calm again. The phone stopped ringing. The camera picked up nothing. The sheriff said they were tracking leads but didn't offer details. Then, a few nights later, the camera caught something. Movement by the barn. A shape. A man. He didn't try to come inside, didn't knock. Just stood there. Watching. When I went out with a flashlight and Samson on a lead, the figure bolted. Disappeared into the woods. We followed for a while, but the forest was dark and thick. I called the sheriff. They increased patrols. Sent an officer to park near the house at night. Reassured me it was probably just a scare tactic. But Tyler knew something was up. That night he came to my room, dragging his blanket, and asked if he could sleep on the floor. Samson padded in behind him and lay down without waiting for permission. I helped him settle in. Right before he drifted off, he whispered, "He won't take us back. Not if we stay together." I nodded. That's right. Together is how we win. He fell asleep holding Samson's tail like he used to in the cave. And I sat up the rest of the night, watching the door, heart beating steady, slow, and ready. The morning after the figure appeared at the barn, I sat at the kitchen table sipping burnt coffee and staring out the window. The air was quiet, but not calm. It was the kind of quiet that sits heavy in your bones, makes the birds forget to sing. Samson lay by the back door, wide awake, head raised, ears flicking at every noise. Tyler slept in late, his blanket bunched up on the floor next to Samson's bed, which the dog had generously surrendered for the night. I didn't move for a long time. Just sat there turning things over in my head. Who had been out there? Was it Darren? And if it was, what did he want? If he was looking for trouble, he hadn't brought any yet. But if he was looking for Tyler, I knew there wasn't a judge in the country who'd hand that boy back to him, not after what happened. Still, just knowing the man was close made every shadow feel taller. By the time Tyler woke up, I'd decided to call in a favor. I had a buddy named Hank, who lived up in Kentucky, used to do private security work. We hadn't talked in a while, but he picked up on the second ring. "You still got that old place with the barn and the ridge behind it?" he asked after I explained. "Yeah." "All right, I'll be there tomorrow. I'll bring my gear. Don't worry, we'll keep things quiet. True to his word, Hank showed up the next afternoon in a truck that looked more armored than painted. He had a German shepherd of his own named Milo, sleek and sharp-eyed. Tyler took to both of them immediately. "Is Milo a soldier?" he asked. "Used to be," Hank said with a wink. "Now he's retired, like me. But he still knows how to sniff out bad guys." Samson and Milo got along, though it took a few cautious sniffs and a minute of side-eyeing. But once they figured each other out, they settled into a quiet alliance, like soldiers recognizing another veteran. Hank set up a motion sensor near the barn and another by the front gate. Nothing too fancy, just enough to trigger alerts and light up the driveway. He slept in the guest room, kept his boots on, and drank his coffee black as oil. "I'll stick around a few days," he said. "If nothing happens by the weekend, maybe he's just blowing smoke." But something did happen. Thursday night, long after Tyler had gone to bed and I was finishing up dishes, the back sensor went off. The alert popped up on Hank's phone. We both froze. He glanced at the screen. "Back gate, just outside the fence." He slipped on his coat, gestured to me to stay behind. I didn't listen. We took both dogs, no flashlights, just moonlight and nerves. The yard was silent, too silent. I could feel my pulse in my ears. Hank motioned for me to go left while he circled right. We moved slow, steps soft, listening for anything that didn't belong. Then we heard it, a low rustling in the brush. Not an animal. Heavier, steadier. Hank moved first. In one fluid motion, he stepped behind the sound and flicked on his flashlight. "Hands up!" he barked. The man in the beam froze like a deer. Scruffy beard, dirty jacket, eyes wide with surprise. It wasn't Darren. It was someone younger, maybe early 20s. Hands trembling. "Who are you?" Hank asked, gun still holstered but hand ready. I was just looking," the man stammered. "For the kid, the one from the news." "What for?" The man swallowed. "I used to know him. I knew his dad. I just wanted to see if he was really here." I stepped closer. "You knew Darren Boyd?" The man nodded. "He was my uncle." My stomach turned. "And why are you sneaking around a kid's house in the middle of the night?" "I didn't mean nothing," he said quickly. "I just wanted to see. That's all." We didn't believe him. Hank called the sheriff. They picked him up within 30 minutes. No charges. Technically, he hadn't crossed the fence, but they gave him a warning and made it clear he wasn't welcome back. Tyler never found out. I wanted to keep it that way, but the question lingered. How many people out there still had ties to Darren? And how many of them cared enough to come looking? Friday evening, Hank packed up his gear. "You'll be all right," he said, "but keep the cameras up, and call me if anything changes." I walked him out to his truck, grateful and anxious all at once. "Thanks, Hank," he shrugged. "That kid's got a strong heart, and that dog's worth more than 10 locks on the door. You'll be okay." Tyler waved goodbye from the porch. Milo barked once, and Samson returned it with a quiet huff. After Hank left, the days settled again. But something about Tyler was different. Not in a bad way. He just seemed more thoughtful. He started asking questions that reached deeper. "Do people forget where they come from?" "Sometimes," I told him. "Sometimes they choose to." "Did I?" I paused. "You didn't forget. You survived. That's different." He sat with that for a while. Then he went to his room and came back with his scrapbook. "I want to start a second one," he said. "The first one was about remembering. The second one will be about now." We bought a new album the next day. He decorated the cover with a drawing of our house and the names Me, Samson, and You. This one he organized more like a journal. Pages with notes like, "Watched a cloud shaped like a boat," or found a beetle the size of a marble, named him Fred. He drew a picture of the sheriff's compass and wrote, "This tells me where I am, but Samson tells me who I am." Sometimes he'd hand me pages to write the words he dictated. Other times, he did it himself, in crooked, determined letters. And one day, out of the blue, he asked me if he could visit the cave. I stopped stirring my coffee. "Why do you want to go back?" He didn't answer right away. "I think it's still waiting for me." I nodded. "All right. But only if Samson comes, too." "Of course," he said. So we packed a lunch, filled our water bottles, and drove out to Pine Ridge. The trail was overgrown, but not gone. Tyler led the way with the compass clipped to his belt. Samson walked beside him like a furry shadow. When we reached the clearing, Tyler stopped. "It's smaller than I remember," he said quietly. Things usually are. He walked slowly toward the entrance, brushing his fingers along the mossy rocks. I stood back, letting him go at his pace. Samson didn't hesitate. He padded right into the mouth of the cave like he'd never left it. Inside, the air was cooler, damp. The space hadn't changed much. Some old blankets still in a pile. A rusted tin cup. The faint smell of earth and old secrets. Tyler sat down on the same patch of stone where I'd first seen him. He closed his eyes for a long time. Then he reached into his backpack and pulled out a photo. The one of him and his brother. The only one he'd kept from the first scrapbook. He set it gently on the ground. "This is where we waited," he whispered. "But we don't have to wait anymore." We stayed there for maybe an hour, long enough for him to say goodbye in his own way. When we left, he didn't look back. On the drive home, he stared out the window, quiet but calm. "Can we get ice cream?" he asked suddenly. I smiled. "You bet." And that night, he added a page to his new book, a drawing of the cave with a little heart above it. He didn't write anything, just taped the drawing in and shut the book. Some things don't need words. Samson climbed into bed with him that night, which he hadn't done in weeks. Tyler didn't mind. "You can rest now," he whispered. "We're good." And in the hallway, I stood for a while, watching the two of them drift into sleep. And for the first time in a long time, I did too. Summer came in hot and loud, as it always does in our part of the country. Cicadas screamed in the trees from dawn to dusk, and the air seemed to buzz with heat. Tyler didn't mind. He took to summer like he'd been waiting for it his whole life. No more classrooms, no more assignments, just open skies, creeks to splash in, and trails to explore with Samson always just ahead or behind. By then, it had been 6 months since the adoption was finalized. 6 months of family dinners, game nights, new memories, and no more letters or midnight figures outside the barn. The sheriff had followed a few dead-end leads, and eventually, even he had to admit things might have burned themselves out. I wasn't fully convinced, but I'd learned to live with one eye open. Still, the quiet days gave us room to grow. Tyler had taken a liking to gardening. It started with a tomato plant he brought home from school in a paper cup. We repotted it, set it near the porch, and watched it grow. Soon, we had a full row of vegetables lining the fence. Tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchini, even a few pumpkins that threatened to take over the yard. He gave each plant a name. "This one's Sam, not like Samson, just Sam." "And that one?" "Pickles." "Why Pickles?" He shrugged. "Feels like a pickles?" He took his new role as garden keeper seriously. Every morning, rain or shine, he'd check on them, pull weeds, talk to them like they were old friends. Samson would follow him with his usual patient air, occasionally stopping to sniff a leaf or flop in the shade. One afternoon, as we were pruning back a wild patch of squash, Tyler looked up and said, "Do you think plants remember where they come from?" I paused. "Like the seed?" He nodded. "Like if they were part of something before." I smiled. "Maybe, but I think they care more about where they're growing now." He seemed to like that answer. That week, I took him fishing. I figured it was time. We packed up the old rods and headed out to Willow Creek, the same place my dad used to take me. Tyler didn't catch anything the first hour, but he didn't mind. He liked the sound of the water, the frogs in the reeds, the way Samson would stand at the edge of the creek and stare at the fish like he was planning something. Then, just before lunch, Tyler got a bite. The line jerked, and he let out a shout that probably scared off every fish in the county. With a little help, he reeled in a sunfish barely bigger than his palm. He held it up like a trophy. "We have to let him go," he said, eyes wide. "He's got more swimming to do." And he gently lowered the fish back into the water. "I think he'll remember me," he added, serious. That became his summer motto. "They'll remember me." He said it about birds, bugs, even the ice cream man who showed up at the end of our road every other Thursday. "Think he'll remember I like strawberry next time?" "Absolutely," I'd tell him. How could he forget? But in between the bright, simple joys of summer, the deeper questions still surfaced. "Do you think he's still out there?" Tyler asked one night as we watched fireflies blink through the yard. "Who?" "The man from before. Darren." I didn't answer right away. "I think he probably is," I said finally. "But I also think he knows you're not alone anymore." Tyler nodded slowly. "Samson scared him, didn't he?" "I think Samson scared him more than anyone ever had." Tyler reached down and ran a hand along Samson's back. The dog sighed and rested his head in the boy's lap. "He used to hit things," Tyler said suddenly. "Throw stuff, yell a lot. I don't remember everything, but I remember that." I kept still. "I tried to be quiet," he added, "but it didn't help. Only Samson helped." "You don't have to be quiet here," I said. "You never have to be quiet again unless you want to." He looked up. "What if I want to yell sometimes?" "Then yell." He smiled, and right then, he cupped his hands and let out a loud "Ah!" into the dark. Somewhere in the woods, a crow called back. We both laughed. Summer rolled on. Tyler's second scrapbook grew thick with pages, doodles, notes, pressed leaves, feathers, candy wrappers, even a frog-shaped rock he taped in with 4 strips of packing tape. One day, he made a new section. Stuff I want to do. The first entry, go on a road trip. So we did. I took a week off work, filled up the truck, and we set out west. Just the 3 of us. No itinerary, no clocks, just a map Tyler insisted on tracing with a marker. We visited a drive-through safari park where a llama sneezed on Samson and made Tyler laugh so hard he got hiccups. We slept in a roadside motel that had a pool with 1 working light and a soda machine that only took quarters. In one small town, we stopped at a diner with red booths and pie that tasted like a memory. Tyler drew the waitress and gave her the picture with her tip. "You're famous now," he told her. Halfway through the trip, we pulled over to stretch our legs near a wide-open field. Tyler ran until he couldn't run anymore. Samson chased him, barked once, then flopped into the grass like he'd declared victory. We stayed out there for an hour, just lying in the grass, watching clouds shift. "I think we could live on the road," Tyler said. "Like travelers. Like in books." "We could," I agreed. "But the garden would miss you," he grinned. "Pickles would be so mad." When we got back home, everything felt familiar and new all at once. The plants had exploded with growth. Miss Annie had left a pie on the porch with a note that said, "For my favorite explorer." That night, Tyler sat in the yard with Samson and told him all about the trip. "Next time," he whispered, "we'll go even farther." And just like that, the dream got a little bigger. Toward the end of July, Tyler started asking about school again. "Will second grade be harder?" "Maybe," I said. "But you're tougher now. What if nobody remembers me?" I knelt beside him. "Tyler, you leave footprints. Even when you don't mean to, people remember." He nodded and went back to drawing. He didn't ask about Darren again that summer. Not once. But sometimes, when the wind picked up or the house creaked just right, I saw him glance toward the windows, just for a second. Then he'd turn back to whatever he was doing. We never did hear from Darren again. Not a letter, not a call, nothing. The sheriff said the man had vanished again. No new crimes, no new sightings, just gone. But I knew better than to assume anything. Some people don't send warnings the second time. Still, life went on, and in our little house at the edge of town, guarded by a boy and his dog, peace returned. Not all at once, not perfectly, but it came back all the same. And every day, Tyler added a new page to his story. Quietly, steadily, with Samson watching every word. The first day of second grade came with fog, the thick morning kind that muffles sound and makes the whole world feel like it's holding its breath. Tyler stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his shirt collar with a mix of excitement and nerves. He'd picked out his clothes the night before, laid them across the foot of his bed. Khaki shorts, a bright green shirt with a cartoon dinosaur, and his scuffed-up sneakers with mismatched laces. The compass from the sheriff was clipped to his belt loop like always. His backpack, patched and stickered and slightly too heavy, waited by the front door. Samson was already there, sitting like a sentry. He knew what today meant. Tyler wasn't the only one who remembered the first bus ride the year before. "You sure you want to ride the bus again?" I asked. Tyler nodded. "Yeah, Colin says he saved me a seat." "You nervous?" "A little, but I think that's okay." It was more than okay. It was growth. And after everything he'd been through, growth like that felt like watching a flower push up through concrete. We walked to the end of the drive together. Samson padded along beside us, tail wagging low and slow. When the bus rumbled into view, I saw Tyler's hand tighten around his backpack strap. He turned and gave Samson a quick hug. "Guard the house," he whispered. Then he looked up at me. "Don't forget to water Pickles." I gave a mock salute. "Pickles is top priority." He smiled, climbed aboard, and disappeared behind the dusty windows. Samson and I stood there until the bus rounded the corner and the sound of its engine faded. The yard was quieter without him. Quieter in a way that made the silence feel temporary. I filled the time by fixing the back fence, weeding the garden, running errands. Samson followed me from chore to chore, alert but calm. He was used to the quiet, too, but not in the same way. His calm came from knowing Tyler was coming back. It was a kind of trust I still didn't fully understand, but I respected it. When the bus returned that afternoon, Tyler came off it grinning, waving a worksheet in the air like it was a winning lottery ticket. "I got the first gold star of the year," he shouted, "for helping someone spell porcupine." Samson bounded toward him with a low bark of excitement. Tyler dropped to his knees and let the dog smother him with licks. That evening, as we sat on the porch eating leftover spaghetti, Tyler asked if he could start a new part in his scrapbook. "What's this one going to be?" I asked. "It's called helping." "Helping?" "Yeah, like things I do to make stuff better, big or small." I nodded. "That's a good one." He wrote the word carefully on a fresh page, then drew a gold star and a porcupine with glasses. Over the next few weeks, the section filled quickly, helping the janitor carry boxes, helping a kid find their lunchbox, helping the librarian sort the picture books. It became his thing, and people noticed. Miss Annie from the diner even started calling him the helper when we stopped in for Saturday pancakes. "Here comes my favorite helper," she'd say. "You got any good deeds left in you today?" Tyler would nod and hold the door open for whoever came next. That fall, something else changed. Colin's mom invited us over for a bonfire night. It was a small gathering, just their family and one or two neighbors. Tyler had never been to something like that before. He asked me a dozen questions on the drive over. "What do you do at a bonfire?" "Sit around, tell stories, roast marshmallows. Try not to let your shoes catch on fire." "Do I have to talk?" "Only if you want to." He was quiet the rest of the way. But once we got there, he eased into it. The fire crackled. The air smelled like wood smoke and pine. Colin showed him how to roast a marshmallow without losing it in the flames. Someone handed them both sparklers, and for 10 minutes they danced through the yard with glittering light trailing behind them. Later, one of the neighbors told a spooky story, something about a haunted barn. Tyler listened intently, eyes wide, knees pulled up to his chest. When it ended, everyone laughed and clapped. Then, to my surprise, Tyler raised his hand. "I have a story too," he said. The group fell silent. "It's not spooky," he continued, "but it's about a cave, and a dog, and waiting." He didn't tell them everything, just a version of it, enough to make the adults nod and the kids listen. When he finished, no one said anything right away. Then Colin said, "That's the coolest story I ever heard." Tyler looked down, smiled, and quietly asked for another marshmallow. We stayed until the fire burned low. When we got home, Tyler added a new drawing to his scrapbook: a cave, a fire, and a bunch of stick figures with smiling faces around it. Samson was in the center, bigger than anyone else. "This one's called Brave," he said. That Monday, Tyler's teacher sent me an email, said she wanted to nominate him for a peer leadership group. "He has a quiet strength," she wrote. "Other kids feel safe around him." That one hit me hard, because I knew exactly where that strength came from. Later that month, the sheriff invited us to the station for a tour. They were doing a community event, letting kids see the inside of a patrol car, talk to the K9 units, ask questions. Tyler was hesitant at first, but when he heard there'd be other dogs, he agreed. We got there early. The sheriff met us out front, gave Tyler a badge sticker, and introduced us to the officers. Everyone knew about Samson, of course. One of the K9 handlers knelt down to meet him. "He's not trained like ours," the man said, scratching behind Samson's ears, "but I bet he's braver." Tyler beamed. One of the highlights was the evidence room. It wasn't part of the official tour, but the sheriff offered to show us a peek. Just a quiet moment away from the crowd. Inside, boxes lined the shelves, locked cabinets, An old corkboard with faded photos and maps. "Some of this stuff's been sitting here a long time," the sheriff said, "waiting for closure." Tyler stared at the shelves, then turned to me. "Is mine here?" he asked. The sheriff looked at me, then back at Tyler. "It was," he said gently. "But not anymore. Your case is closed. You're right where you're supposed to be." Tyler nodded. "Good." On the way out, he tugged my sleeve. "Can we go back sometime?" "To the station?" "Yeah. I think I want to learn more." "About police work?" "About helping." I put my hand on his shoulder. "Then we'll go back." That night, he made a new page in his scrapbook. Drew himself in a police hat, holding a leash. Samson was beside him, looking proud. "Helping, Part 2, he wrote at the top. Fall crept in slowly, trading summer's heat for crisp mornings and longer shadows. Tyler took it all in stride. Boots instead of sneakers, jackets over t-shirts, the smell of cinnamon in the air when we passed the bakery on Main Street. Halloween came, and he dressed as a forest ranger, complete with a felt badge, toy binoculars, and a patch that said Wildlife Hero. Samson wore a green scarf and a floppy ranger hat that lasted about 3 minutes before falling off. Tyler only went to a handful of houses. He didn't like crowds much, but every door he knocked on gave him extra candy just for having the best partner. "Who trained your dog?" someone asked. Tyler smiled. "I think we trained each other." We got home late. He dumped out his candy, sorted it by color, gave me all the black licorice. "You earned it," he said, "for being the driver." And before bed, he wrote something new in his scrapbook. A sentence this time, not just a label or caption. I think I was meant to find him, and he was meant to find me, and everything after that was just the world catching up. I didn't ask him what he meant. I just sat there beside him while he taped in a wrapper from his favorite piece of candy and yawned. And outside the window, the leaves fell steady like blessings. And Samson, never far, blinked once, then closed his eyes to rest. The first snow came early that year, surprising even the weatherman who'd predicted light flurries. We woke to a quiet world blanketed in white. Tyler stood at the window in his pajamas, barefoot, hands pressed to the glass. "It's magic," he whispered. Samson, never one for subtlety, barked once and pawed at the front door. Within minutes, Tyler was bundled in boots and mismatched mittens, running through the front yard like it was a whole new planet. Samson chased him with the same energy he'd had since the day I found him, snow flying off his thick coat as he bounded through drifts. I watched them from the porch, coffee steaming in my hands, wondering how I ever lived before these two came into my life. That afternoon, we built a snowman. Well, technically, a snow dog. Tyler insisted. He even used one of Samson's old tennis balls for the nose. "It's more accurate," he said. "Samson doesn't have a carrot." That night, we lit a fire and roasted marshmallows in the fireplace like we had on the road trip. Tyler added a page to his scrapbook with cotton balls glued down as snow and a drawing of the snow dog labeled Samson 2. As winter settled in, something changed in Tyler. He still laughed, still played, but there was a deeper stillness to him now. Like he was thinking more, feeling more. He started reading on his own without being asked, mostly books about animals and survival stories. He read one called Dog Heroes, cover to cover, then immediately started it again. "I want to write one like this," he said one evening. "But just about Samson." "I think that's a perfect idea." He took an old notebook from the drawer and started writing the next morning. Every day after school, he'd sit at the kitchen table, chewing his pencil, mumbling to himself as he tried to get it just right. Chapter 1. The Cave, he read aloud one night. There was a boy and a dog. The boy was scared, but the dog was brave. The dog stayed. The boy learned how to be brave too. I had to step out of the room to collect myself. By the time Christmas rolled around, his story was 4 chapters deep, complete with drawings, dialogue, and even a section where Samson had his own inner thoughts. Tyler insisted dogs had thoughts, even if they didn't speak them. They say stuff with their eyes, he explained. Samson says the most. The sheriff stopped by with a wrapped box and a card. Inside was a dog tag engraved with the words, Hero, Guardian, Friend. Tyler clipped it to Samson's collar with care. He already knows, Tyler said, but now everyone else will too. On Christmas Eve, we all curled up by the fire again. Tyler, me, Samson. Snow fell slow and steady outside the windows. Tyler leaned his head on Samson's back and said, I don't want anything to change. Some things will, I told him. But the good stuff? We'll carry that with us. He nodded. Samson will help me remember. New Year's came, then January, then February. And then, one morning, everything changed. It was a Saturday. Cold, but bright. Tyler was at the table working on Chapter 8 of his story. Samson was in the yard, sniffing near the trees. I was refilling the bird feeder when I heard the sound. A yelp. Sharp. Quick. I dropped the seed and ran. Samson was lying near the fence, breathing hard, eyes wide. Tyler was already there, on his knees beside him. What happened? He fell, Tyler said, voice shaking. He yelped, and then he fell. I knelt beside them, ran my hands over Samson's side. No wounds, no blood, but something was wrong. He wasn't moving right. We carried him to the truck. The vet took him in right away, ran tests, x-rays, blood work. We waited in the lobby for what felt like hours. Tyler didn't say a word. He just held Samson's leash in his lap like a lifeline. Finally, Dr. Langley came out. It's his heart, she said gently. He's older than we thought. Probably been fighting this for a while without showing signs. Can you fix it? Tyler asked. We can try medication, help him feel better, but he'll need to rest. No more running, no more long walks. Tyler nodded. Okay, we can rest. We brought Samson home that afternoon. Tyler set up a bed for him near the fire, surrounded by his favorite toys, and even a few of the scrapbook pages he'd drawn. Every night, he sat beside him and read from the story they were writing together. Spring came slow that year. The snow melted, the birds returned. But we didn't go hiking. We didn't chase through the yard. We learned to walk slower, to sit longer, to listen more. Samson still had good days. He'd bark at the mailman, wag his tail at the sound of Tyler's voice. But there were days when he slept more than he woke, when he only got up to eat and stretch. One Sunday, we sat on the porch watching the sunset. Tyler rested his head on Samson's back. I think he knows he doesn't have to guard anymore, he said. I nodded. I think you're right. He still does it, though, even in his sleep. That night, Tyler finished his story. The last page was a drawing of the cave, just like the beginning. But this time, the cave was empty. The boy and the dog were outside in the light, walking toward a house with smoke curling from the chimney. Tyler titled the story, The Dog Who Waited. "I think I want to read it to the class," he said. "At school, for show and tell." "You sure?" he nodded. "It's not just mine anymore. Other kids might need it." And he did. He read it with clear eyes and steady hands, standing tall while his classmates listened. Some cried, some clapped. His teacher hugged him after. That night, he came home and sat beside Samson for a long time. "Everyone loved your story," he whispered. "You helped them too." That weekend, we all sat outside under the stars. Tyler pointed to one just above the trees. "That one's his," he said. A few days later, Samson didn't get up. He was calm, peaceful, eyes soft. He let Tyler hug him, licked his hand, then closed his eyes and let go. We buried him under the tree near the garden. Tyler placed the dog tag on a rock above the spot. We planted flowers all around it. For a long time, we sat there in silence. "I was never alone," Tyler said. "No," I told him. "You never were." And in the days that followed, he kept writing, kept drawing, kept remembering. Because some dogs don't just save lives, they guard something bigger, something that never really leaves. And sometimes a boy becomes brave not because he was taught, but because someone believed he already was. Tyler still walks to the garden every morning. He still talks to Samson. And I still believe that dog is listening.